Are you going to be training the glutes effectively, or are you going to be desperately trying not to fall over and hurt yourself in the middle of the gym? That's a question only you can answer, but when you're wibbling and wobbling like you're on a Bosu ball, not necessarily the best time. Unstable movements aren't the best time for building muscle. Considering I just got over the last illness literally like 2 weeks ago, how am I ill again already? We're looking at somebody who's been stalking me and following me and consuming my social medias recently. There's this individual here, Miranda. And I say that because every time I go on YouTube, everywhere I go, there's just a shorts video or a video of her popping up, boom, 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 like an edit or something. I cannot escape it. So I figured, I've been fighting this for months now. I can't fight it anymore. Here we are. So a lot of you seem to like the workout reviews where I don't listen to what they're saying and just give my full, honest and completely unbiased and original opinion on what I'm seeing based on my own interpretation. So we're going to do that today with her Enjoy Leg Day with Me video. Immediately, it's a lie, because if you enjoy leg day, maybe I'm not the only one who should be in therapy right now. Also, I want to clarify something. The first thing I actually saw when I looked at this video is Saturdays are my third and last leg day of the week. So we're actually going to talk about that very quickly. Do you need to train muscle groups multiple times per week? Probably not. Recent research has suggested frequency doesn't matter provided volume is equated. So if you do 10 sets of legs in a week and you split it into 1 day of 10 or 2 days of 5, probably isn't going to make a difference to your results. What I typically prefer to do is train muscle groups multiple times a week for a different reason, because doing so allows me to actually equate greater weekly volume. So instead of doing 1 day with 10 sets, I could do 2 days with 6 sets each, therefore 12 sets of weekly volume rather than just 10, which could have a positive impact on the gains you may experience. Who knows? 3 days, I mean, technically, if it's a weak point for you or something you really want to focus on, you can definitely consider training legs 3 days a week, adjust volume accordingly, and make sure you can recover, because that's a big thing. There's no point doing it if you can't recover from it. So we're starting off this leg day with a hamstring glute movement. B stance RDL. So B stance essentially refers to the stance she's adopting. One leg is in front of the other. 4 sets of 8 reps each side. Control negative, take your last set till failure. So again, I've already given my opinions on doing this much volume. I think it's a bit excessive. I just think 4 sets for me is just too much. And mentally, I just check out as well. If I've got 4 sets of something, I'm going to be doing it, and then after second set I'm like, well, I'm only halfway, and just mentally I'm gone. So I typically like 1 to 2 sets of most things, sometimes 3 if I'm feeling particularly sad. When you put your hand on your back here, it could encourage a bit of like upper body rotation, which is something we want to try and avoid. So for this, I'd probably try and avoid putting your hand here and keep your hand in a more neutral position where it's maybe along your side. I typically actually run my hand down my leg, but the B stance RDL is a great movement. Absolutely. Again, I think ultimately due to this altering position where you can implement some rotation intentionally if you want to, not so much from the hand positioning, but more from just actually because you want to implement rotation, it may allow you to actually further lengthen the glutes a little bit more, and obviously the RDL works the glutes in that lengthened position. I think it's solid. There's also a nice, almost a unilateral hip hinge variation you can do. What I would say, especially with something like this where your lower back is getting battered equally on both sides, please take a rest between sides. Do not go from left side straight into right side. Do with the left side, rest for some minutes, and then do the right side afterwards. You'll see, you'll thank me. So glute step up. I think this box looks a little low to me. Yeah, she's shifting forward slightly, maybe not. It depends on your height, really. What we typically want to do is try and get the knee around that 90-degree mark. Obviously, we're trying to limit that knee flexion here where the knees are traveling forward, because that brings a bit more of the quads. What we kind of want is the shin to remain a bit more vertical if we can. Don't have to, but it just shifts a bit of emphasis from the quads back over to the glutes. And like I said, limiting to about that 90-degree mark, because again, I guess arguably she's actually in a good spot, but I'm a lot taller, so maybe that's probably why it looks a bit low to me. Obviously, you can see she's surrounded by benches, but she's opting to use a step-up platform thing. This is a yes from me. The benches, although are probably maybe a better height, who knows, soft padding means instability. When you have an unstable foot, are you going to be training the glutes effectively, or are you going to be desperately trying not to fall over and hurt yourself in the middle of the gym? That's a question only you can answer, but when you're wibbling and wobbling like you're on a Bosu ball, not necessarily the best time. Unstable movements aren't the best time for building muscle. Dumbbell step up glute focus, 4 sets of 8 reps each, so same as the last one. Control negative, take last set to failure, same as the last one. Again, whether you take all sets to failure or your last set to failure is completely up to you. Time and place for both. The excessive tempo here is something to assess. I think, in fairness, for something like a step up, this additional tempo isn't a bad thing, because again, it avoids you bouncing off that back foot too much, but excessive tempo is not going to lead to greater hypertrophy results. Time under tension for the sake of hypertrophy has kind of largely been binned. Just need to make sure you're working the muscles you actually want to be working and not excessively slowing down the movement for the sake of thinking it's going to do more, when in reality it's probably not. Very quickly, I must interrupt you for 2 seconds. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel by clicking the red button down below and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week, because it will very much help the channel grow and thrive, which is exactly what we love to see. And I would very much appreciate your time and investment into me. In addition to that, the TFNL group coaching Train Heroic platform is linked down below in the description, in which I make programs for the community for them to follow along as a group or individually through the Train Heroic app, which costs less than your Netflix subscription. And we're actually due to start a new block very soon in the coming weeks. So now is a perfect time to get involved because, again, we're about to start fresh. In addition to that, TFNL workout guides are, as always, linked below in the description or the comment section, where we've got the growth guide or the home workout handbook, which are workout resources with lots of information surrounding how to train effectively, including over 30 weeks of programming each, with many pages, not just explaining how to do things, but also why you should do things. So it basically covers everything. And obviously on top of that, TFNL coaching, where I work with people one-to-one, or Ryder, someone who's come on under the TFNL coaching brand, will work with you on a one-to-one basis, is also an option if you fancy clicking the application form down below and applying for that. Please do consider it, but again, never feel pressured to look at any of those things. But now I will let you crack back on with the video. So now we're moving on to a quad extension, so leg extension. Again, 3 sets of 8 reps. She loves 8 reps. In fairness, there's nothing wrong with that. I like a bit of variety myself. I usually say, let's say 6 to 10 or something along those lines, but 8 reps is fine if you want to. 3-second negative, again, I think most negatives should probably be around like the 2 to 4 second mark anyway, just for the sake of controlling the movement. So if you want to count 3 seconds if you want, that's absolutely fine. So one thing I actually want to address with this is leaning forward versus leaning back. Someone actually messaged me this earlier about leaning forward versus leaning back on the leg extension. The leg extension is potentially the only quad-based movement that allows you to work the rec fem, which is a muscle of the quads, in its shortened position. Therefore, leaning forward slightly at the hip could further shorten the rec fem, kind of enhancing how much of a shortened position dominant movement it is. So you can certainly do that. That being said, you can also lean back if you want. Leaning back may yield better hypertrophy results because muscles typically, not always, but typically grow best in their lengthened position. I believe the quads especially do seem to respond really well to lengthened position dominant movements. So for the sake of purely looking at optimizing the building of muscle, you almost actually want to lean back as far as you can to lengthen as much as you can. But if you're including like a leg extension and a sissy squat being a lengthened position movement that targets the rec fem too, I would probably then lean forward. So it's a time and a place. I think they're both very good. It's really up to you. There's no right or wrong. Considering this is what she claims to be her lower volume day, so of the 3 leg days, it's her lower volume one. She's already doing more volume in one leg day, her lower volume leg day of 3, than I would do personally, and nearly, so far just 4 movements in, as much volume I do throughout my entire week of both my leg days combined. Adductor machine, again, so we're working the inner thigh muscles being the adductors here. Do you need to work them directly? You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Ultimately, if you squat deep enough or do any squat variation or squat pattern low enough, you are going to be recruiting the adductors. I've mentioned this before. The adductors are kind of primary drivers to get you out of that bottom position of these squat patterns. So if you're going low enough in the squat, you probably don't need to. But again, that very much depends on you, your body, your weaknesses, your strengths. So you can certainly include them if you want to. No surprise here, 3 sets of 8. Again, my preferred rep range is 5 to 10, but I would like a bit more variety. Maybe sets of 10, maybe sets of 6 to 10, maybe 8 to 10, who knows? And now we're going on to calves. 6 sets of 8 reps. That's a lot of sets, and guess what? Still 8 reps. If I could only choose between a seated calf raise and a standing calf raise, I would probably favor a standing calf raise, or any calf raise that allows me to raise with straight legs. So that could be leg press, essentially because that places more emphasis on the gastrocnemius, whereas seated calf raises usually put a bit more emphasis on the soleus, which is again another muscle of the calves, but it's probably not the dominant juicy one you're thinking of, whereas the gastrocnemius is. 6 sets is a lot. I don't think you need to do 6 sets. Maybe if you want to do 2 sets of standing, 2 sets of seated, I don't know. I've heard doing calf raises myself, so yeah, better range of motion. Honestly, I feel this move is a huge shoe creaser. What I would say about calves, and something that I believe can help a lot of people with their calves, is actually tempo, but I don't mean the normal tempo what you're thinking of. Is what I would typically do is calves really seem to respond very nicely to stretch position, so just loaded stretching and just stretching in general. So what I would do with that information is at the bottom of each rep right here, stretch as low as you can, like really stretch the calves. So her stretch is a bit limited, so really kind of stretch as much as you can, and in doing so, hold that stretch position for about 3 seconds every rep. And then you can also hold the contraction position at the top for about 3 seconds every rep as well. Trust me, it feels like your sets last a lifetime, because sadly they do. But trust me, if your calves are lacking, try implementing 3-second pauses at the top and bottom of each rep, primarily a straight leg calf raise, but also implementing a seated calf raise as well. well with a bent leg. Do that for a while, maybe train calves twice a week or something. You'll be laughing. If you really want to prioritize them and give them the best opportunity to grow, make sure you are training them with sufficient intensity. That's so hard to do with calves because they hurt and they make me feel sick. And also maybe train them near the start of the session. Movements implemented earlier on in sessions typically yield a better hypertrophy response. And that's actually her video. Looking at volume, I believe it was 4 sets for the first, 4 sets for the second, 3, 3, 6. That's 20 sets of legs. That's probably near enough the most amount of sets I would do for both of my leg days combined in a week. I typically do 8 to 10 on one day, 8 to 10 on the other. Probably too much volume, especially considering she's training legs 3 times per week. Could you achieve the same, if not potentially better results doing less? Maybe. If you can recover from it, that's the main thing. Recovery is key. If you can recover from doing this and you want to, that's fine, go for it. There's also a chance that you, or maybe she, may actually experience the same, if not potentially better results from actually doing less. Just a consideration. Provided your intensity is there, your movement quantity is there, and you're recovering, you're probably in a good spot. It's just that doing this much volume is a lot. With the consideration this has the least amount of volume, we're doing 20 sets. Let's assume that they actually all have 20 sets. That's 60 sets of legs per week. I don't think I do 60 sets per week of my entire workout week combined. I don't think if I put all of my workouts together, it adds up to 60 sets. Actually, I'm certain it doesn't. From a technique standpoint, her technique was fairly solid. Time under tension was a bit excessive. I think she slowed down movements a bit too much, but from a technical perspective, how she was actually lifting, it was fine, it was good. I didn't really need to talk too much about that. From a movement selection standpoint, it's okay, it's fine. From a volume standpoint, way out there, unnecessary. I think, again, this is the first video I've actually seen of this creator, like first proper video, so I can't really give too much of an assessment or opinion because I'm literally basing it purely of what I have seen right now. But at the end of the day, you don't need to do that much. Honestly, start with the lower end of volume, let's say 4 to 6 sets per muscle group per week, and then maybe increase that accordingly over the week up to, let's say, a maximum of like roughly 10, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. But it's key to note that doing more doesn't always mean you're doing better. Something I fell victim to many, many years ago when I was doing 3 or 4 hour workouts. You don't need to. You really don't need to. But now we're very quickly going to crack on with comment question of the week. How to gain weight in a healthy manner without tracking calories. At the end of the day, it simply comes down to just trying to eat more. It is that simple. To gain weight, you essentially want to be in a calorie surplus. Whether you track calories or not is completely up to you. What you can do is use your palm as a reference point for calories and stuff and like portions, which is a better way of tracking without needing to worry about calories if you can't do so in a healthy and sustainable manner. It's just portion control with your hand. Or just find more foods you enjoy and just eat a little bit more of them. Or if you have a portion of food, just add a bit more to the portion. Whatever you deem to be a normal portion, add a little bit more. And then maybe get a few more snacks in there. Maybe drink some fruit juice, things like that. Ways of increasing your intake without even really realizing you're doing so. There are many ways, but those are just a few of my preferred ones. Also, there's the obvious one of eating more calorie dense foods like nuts and things like that, because obviously they're very high in fat. But again, it's within reason there. That is it. That is the video. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating the fact that I am once again, for the 100th time this year, ill. And thank you for tolerating the video.